And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. All the buzz over the Trump guy doing the CNN thing. In fact, CNN had more viewers, and understand why. Everyone's like, why is CNN doing this? Here's why. They had 3.1 million viewers. I gotta tell you, I think it's more viewers than they get in an entire week. So for that 1 hour, they matched pretty close to their weekly totals. That's why. It's all about getting eyeballs. And this is the problem with our politics. Our news media. Remember, CNN is supposed to be, walk in the middle of the line. It's all about the eyeballs. It's all about the clicks. It's all about the views. It's all about the ad dollars. And this is why we can't have nice things. Now, interestingly enough, you had 3.1 million viewers. Fox had 1.4, MSNBC 1.3. So literally blew both of them out of the waters. And you knew it would because Trump's a draw. You want to see what's... This is shock jock politics. We're never going to get anything done. Understand that. It's all about how outrageous can he be, and he was. But here's the thing. I'm going to argue that Trump is he's losing his luster. The fact that he got 3.1 million viewers, I'm like, that's, I guess, a lot, but not, these aren't 2015, 2016 numbers. And they aren't even Marjorie Three Names numbers. Because I think she had like almost double that when she did that 60 Minutes interview not too long ago. That really was horrible. But what I find interesting, again, and we knew this was what was going to happen. The hats, the red hats and the blue hats, all happy. Trump knocked it out of the park. He was a decisive leader. He destroyed, he crushed. You got that cheerleading camp over there waving the red hats. Yeah. And on the other side, he was horrible. He did the worst things ever. In fact, the White House evidently, thrilled. From what was the headline? Giddy, positively giddy over Trump's performance. Because look, it really was a gold mine for political ads of the future. I mean, there's going to be tons of stuff. The fact that he didn't say Putin was a war criminal when 80% of the public believe, at least in the last Quinnipiac poll, 80% of Americans think Putin's a war criminal. Trump, no, he's a good guy. He's my buddy. We're buddies. Wouldn't say that he wanted Ukraine to win. No, he would. When 67% of us in the most recent YouGov poll want Ukraine to win and to prevail and for this to end, he said he would pardon the folks who were in that. Remember that little thing that went on January 6th, where they defecated on the floor and broke a bunch of windows and tried to overthrow our democracy and stop an election from being certified. Remember that little day? Yeah, he said he would. What was the exact quote? That he would pardon a large portion of them. A large portion. Those were his words. Also said that he wanted the country to default. Now, again, I was waiting for him to go consistent and say, no, this is as a businessman, this is a dumb thing. As a businessman, this is going to harm the country. As a business person, this is bad. No. He's like, right now, Democrats are bad. They're ruining everything, and we need to make it worse. Even though, according to the most recent polling out by the Washington Post, ABC, 58% go, bad idea. It's irresponsible. And the big one for me is he took credit for Roe. He took credit for the Supreme Court overturning Roe, which really throws his three justices under the bus. Because we were saying during all the confirmation processes, these people were handpicked to do this. And they went in front of the Senate and they, oh no, I believe in decided law, very carefully, dreamed out kind of statements. No, we believe in stare decisis. We would never. No, we believe it's the law of the land. First club out of the bag. Total flip. And he's taking credit for that. And look, if I'm him, maybe I do too. because that's going to play with the base. That's going to go, that's why we voted for him. That's why we put up with all this stupid stuff. That's why we don't care about any of the side shows. I'll tell you, the most disgraceful part, though, is because CNN brought in a favorable crowd. They wanted a rally feel. They were all Republican or Republican-leaning people. There were no protesters in there. There was nobody asking the hard, tough questions. There were sycophants and wannabes. There were people who want, this is our guy. And because they wanted to promote that we're bringing you in, come to us. If you're not going to go over to Fox, come to us. And what I found interesting is, while they're talking about, the case with this E. Jean Carroll and the defamation case and how he's describing things, people are applauding sexual abuse. I mean, have we gotten to be that disgraceful of a society? And the answer is, yeah, I think so. Especially when you get to the fringes, when you get to the extremes. And this is where I keep saying we need to take off the red hats and the blue hats. We need to come up with, a middle hat. Now, I thought Biden had the best response to the CNN town hall. He said, quote, "It's simple, folks. Do you want 4 more years of that?" And I think that's really the question that a lot of people today were trying to figure out. Do you want 4 more years of chaos where nothing really gets done? I mean, we're going to do a lot of things that are going to be beneficial to the wealthy and to big business. That's going to happen. And that will make the moneyed interests very happy. And the argument goes, if businesses are happy, if corporate America is happy, if our wealthy are happy, Wall Street's going to be happy, and then we're all going to be happy. It's going to trickle down. Happiness quotient trickle down. The wealth won't. Don't be silly. There'll be no money. But we'll all be happier, which I completely disagree with. But what I came away with is this feeling that we can't do really anything anymore. We can't solve big problems. We can't even talk to each other in a way that there are commonalities. And as I said yesterday, I think for the working class, for people who work for a living, punch a clock, collect a paycheck, and that paycheck doesn't make it to the end of the week, where we have to unite is in the workplace and begin to transform this economy by making demands in the workplace. The politics, I think we're too far off the rails. I think we've been trained like the Pavlovian dogs. Anytime we hear about the other side, we foam, ears closed, mouth just, And I look at what's going on right now. Evidently today at midnight, this Title 42 is going to expire. And, as you know, that was the border policy that came out of the pandemic. This was Trump's thing. The Biden administration has wanted to continue it. Not happening. So this could cause real chaos. I mean, there are people who right now are concerned this is going to cause real chaos across the political spectrum. Now, on one hand, you've got Republicans who are giddy because you can now beat Biden up with it. See what Biden did? Biden did all this. It's all Biden's fault. Biden opened the border. Biden did all this. Biden. And that's all you're going to get a steady diet of. It's all Biden's fault. He drove him to the border. You're going to hear nonsense like that. And then on the other side, you're going to get the we need to swing the doors open, the extremes. And the reality is we're not really in a place. We're not really in a place to come to some kind of an agreement. Why is immigration, up? Why is this migration happening? Why are we seeing these masses of people coming to the border? And it's simple. Hungry? It's simple. Desperate? It's simple. It's harder living where they were than to make a 1,000-mile trek, through the sand with no shoes on to maybe have something of a life here than it is to stay where you are. And look, again, we cannot and we will not have a solution on this. I guarantee you. I know the House Republicans passed their bill. It's going to go nowhere because this issue one, politically, it's what we need to keep each other at each other's throats. But two, and more importantly, no matter what it is, nobody's going to be happy with it. And that's perfect for the people who want to keep us divided. No matter what it is, nothing is going to make people happy. And it's too big of a political football. I know, Trump said during his thing, he built wall done, complete wall. I built all wall. Okay, wall's built. We shouldn't have a problem, should we? Border security done. Although it's not, we do need to fund and we do need to get the resources to make sure our border is secure. You have to have that. But you have to have enforcement that's done in a humane way with people who have the resources to be able to do this and not be overworked and understaffed. Seems and also respect people's rights. But again, you got to come back to what's the root cause of this migration? Poverty, violence, political instability, all of that stuff. And I've been saying since the Tea Party years, the sad reality is when we stopped foreign aid, a lot of this stuff ramped up. During their Tea Party years, we got to cut it all off, nothing. The reason we gave countries foreign aid is so their people stayed home. So we do need, and I know my right-wing friend's going to lose their mind over me saying we do need to help other areas be more livable. We do need to help make those places more stable. We need to fix our immigration and asylum system. It needs to happen. There needs to be a clear pathway to citizenship. There needs to be a clear, streamlined pathway to visas, and we need to keep families together. Simple. The other side of this is we do need workers. We need people to come in on temporary work programs, and they need to be enforced. Too many people are abusing it. And we desperately need to do something about the backlog. But again, this comes down to resources and funding and doing the things that are never going to get done. And that's my problem in all this. You go back to Reagan. Reagan gave millions amnesty because he knew there wasn't a bus big enough to go collect everyone. And he knew the only way forward was to start with a clean slate. At some point, we're going to have to address that issue. But will we have the courage? No, because we don't have those people in Congress. I want to go to the phones. I got Gary on line 1 from Minneapolis. Gary, what's on your mind, brother?
Hi, how you doing, Rick?
I am good. What's going on?
I was just going to say, Republicans, when they're in office, bankrupt the country, and then when they're out of office, they cry about it. So I called about this debt ceiling, and I think Biden should just say, if they're really serious for a change of, balancing the books of that, why don't do all them tax giveaways to the wealthy that you made ever since Reagan? We have a massive surplus.
I'm right there with you, Gary. Spot on.
Yeah.
Anything else on your mind, brother?
No, I couldn't hear you too good. Maybe because my hearing aids ain't in. But it's so nice to talk to you. You're a great program.
Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate the call. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. No, look, he's right. I mean, the reality is that we want to solve our problems. Maybe return to the good socialist President Dwight David Eisenhower's tax code. And then maybe, here's an idea. Maybe we could fund border security at a level that needs to be done. Because look, I've never been against building a wall. I know they don't work. And if you've seen the videos of Trump's big, beautiful walls and the 52 miles that he built, and you see how fast people scurry over them, I'm okay. I'm not against building a wall. I want to put people to work. I want to create jobs. I would much rather us spend those resources in a better way. And I've always said this. We do have to have secure borders. But we also do have to have sane, rational policies. And what we've had over the last couple of decades has been crazy because it's been mean-spirited on one side and, maybe overly generous on the other. The extremes. And as I've said from the start, if we ever were to come up with a policy, and I'm not saying we're going to, nobody's going to be happy with it. And, as someone who's done some union negotiations, generally it's those agreements that kind of work out the best because you don't get everything you want and you don't lose everything you need. Maybe we do need to hammer some stuff out. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got an email from Lily listening in Santa Fe, New Mexico on KTRC. Talking about, I had said the other day that I think there has to be a moratorium on the AI. We've got to do something before this AI gets out of hand. Before robotics gets out of hand, before we ended up having no jobs left for people to actually do. I mean, there've got to be some ways in doing this. Now, I do find it interesting that as Lily points out, in a medical setting, the Journal of American Medicine said that the chatbots that answered some simple questions were much more preferred than. There's like 79% of people preferred the chatbot over a physician's written answer. And because it's simple, because the chatbot actually, here we go, actually had put some empathy in it, actually put some thought into it, actually did some explaining, whereas the human physician, it was all just about, this is the facts, bottom line. And it's, one of those things that, I've always said I prefer female doctors because they'll listen. And I think this is kind of playing that out. We're going to have to deal with it. But it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Let's go to the phones. We got Todd from Chicago on line 2. How are we doing, Todd?
I'm doing all right, Rick. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
I was pondering this whole immigration thing. I don't have a problem with the immigrants. I get along with anybody most of the time. I mean, this whole thing about what Trump did about South America and and that it's like, why are they hating on these people? We just took in, like 2,000 Ukrainians, last year, and then more Pakistani people because of the earthquake, a few last year also. It's like, what's the problem? Is it a problem with Mexicans, or is it a problem with Ukrainians, or I don't understand what the issue is. My parents are Irish immigrants, so it's,
the argument that I get most often, Todd, the argument I get most often from people is that they're going to come here and they're going to flood the job market, going to lower wages, going to take our jobs, and going to change our culture. Yeah. There's that fear that, and look, Fox News does a great job of, promoting that replacement theory. We're going to bring all these people in and going to replace our white nationalism. I've said from the beginning, in the past, we had spent a lot of money in places around the world to make places livable. When we stopped doing that,
Yeah, exactly.
people started coming here.
Yeah, exactly.
So as
Yeah.
I said,
This is supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and that's what's being promoted around the world. I mean, people coming from Africa and all over the place, and yet we're at a place where Republicans or the government, want to treat these people like crap. Yeah, you can come over, but good luck. After that, it's just as much the same as pregnant women having babies that they didn't want. You can, we won't support your abortion, but after you have your baby, then good luck after that. We're coming from people that don't have the money to support anything in that respect.
Yeah, here's the thing, Todd, and here's the bottom line. If I weren't living in this country, if I were in El Salvador or Nicaragua or Central America, if I were living in Mexico and my kids were hungry and there was no work and there was poverty and desperation, there was no question on my mind I would be making my way here right now. And that's the reality of the situation. Until you can change that, because look, nobody wants to walk 1,000 miles with no shoes on in the sand. They do it out of desperation, and until we can help address that nothing is going to change.
Well, and on the last note, I just want to say that for all the jobs that have been created, under Joe Biden, right now there's nobody to fill those jobs, because some of these people they're in there for like 2 weeks and they don't like it and they drop out, so it's like, and that's happened in my job, at a grocery store and stuff. People come in, it's like a revolving door, so it's like, you got to find people that have the correct work ethic, to even be able to sustain themselves.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, Todd. But I appreciate the thoughts, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, at the end of the day, if we're going to come up with a solution on this, it's got to be in a way that addresses a lot of the concerns that we've talked about. The fact that in some of these places there is desperation, there is poverty, and I've never met anyone, because I've asked that question before. If you were living in one of these places and you were looking your children in the eyes and knowing there was no way you could help feed them, what would you do? And I've never met anyone who has said, well, we would just sit there and starve. They would make their way here, because I still do believe that this is the greatest country in the world. This is where people want to be for a whole bunch of reasons. And I want to promote that. I want to maintain that. But we got to do it in a way that's humane, sane, and rational. Because again, as I think Todd pointed out, the reality is most of us came here on a boat from somewhere else. Just a matter of how long ago. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around to listen to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1967. That was the day United Farm Workers Sons of Zapata joined with the Confederation of Mexican Workers in establishing an international picket line across the Rio Grande Valley. A push to organize farm workers at 6 major growers began the year before, in the spring of 1966. Wages in Starr County ranged from 40 to 85 cents an hour. Farm workers began their strike in June of 1966 for wage increases and union recognition. But growers would rather see their crops rot than recognize the union. They did grant wage increases, but immediately ran to the courts for injunctions. One district judge outlawed all picketing, while police instructed county workers to spray the strikers with insecticide. That August, workers voted to organize with the United Farm Workers and began a pilgrimage march to the state capitol to popularize their cause. 15,000 workers and their supporters reached Austin on Labor Day to demand their right to organize. They returned to Stark County to continue their strike. The growers turned to Mexican commuters holding green cards to break the strike. The United Farm Workers began picketing at Roma and Rio Grande City bridges and were often successful in turning back green card workers. By May 1967, melon harvest had begun. After months of negotiations, picket lines went up on both sides of the international bridges. The picketing was 100% successful for 2 days, but the Mexican government and Starr County Sheriff's Department soon intervened to break up the picket lines. Texas Rangers were brought in to arrest and brutalize strikers. The strike was broken, but organizing continued throughout the region. Picketing across borders was itself an important act of international solidarity. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Tiptoeing around the democratic process, Indiana's Republican legislature has become the latest of that ilk to slap its local school librarians with an idiotic book ban. Snuck into law behind closed doors, the partisan Hoosier Law requires librarians to pull books that the learned lawmakers consider, quote, harmful to minors. Just to juice up the ignorance and arrogance of their ban, the law criminalizes failure to comply by punishing librarians with up to 2.5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. What constitutes harmful to minors? Indiana's priggish politicians declared nudity, sexual references, and offensive content to community standards to be violations. Obviously, then, books commanding that rape victims marry their rapists, as well as celebrating daughters who seduce their father to bear his children, plus endorsement of bestiality, copulation in church, women boiling their children for food, and so god-awful much more, have to be ripped from the shelves and burned. Only all of this is enshrined in the Bible, which is urged on Indiana's youngsters in Sunday schools, conveniently placed in the bedstands of every chain hotel and cited by pious lawmakers as their moral compass. The so-called good book is replete with the gross and explicit sexual material that Republican book censors call harmful. Indeed, a feisty civil libertarian organization named Freedom from Religion Foundation gives away book labels you can stick in Bibles, warning that, quote, literal belief in this book may endanger your health and life. This is Jim Hightower saying the books that right-wing autocrats want to ban are not pornographic. They just explore ideas that those politicians don't like, ideas that young people are already grappling with. And by the way, why not require these pious lawmakers to disclose what licentious material they've been reading before they dictate what we read?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, not surprising, Trump is appealing the $5 million judgment that was awarded by the Manhattan federal jury in the E. Jean Carroll case. And she, equally not surprising, is considering suing Trump again after the town hall statements. So, yeah, this is what Trump thrives on. This kind of chaos. And I got to tell you, I think Biden's right. Do you really want 4 more? Do you want 4 years of that? Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the big CNN town hall. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello, happy Thursday.
So, gut reaction to the dog and pony show?
It was stupid, first of all. My theory is that they will probably end up losing what few viewers they have left because they've alienated them so much with this BS. And it feels sort of like 2016 when nobody really knew how to cover Trump, and it was like Collins tried to fact check him in real time, but he just talked over and it didn't really work. And I just sort of feel like we're coming back again to this thing. And it's like, we have been here before. We figured this out before. Why is this why are you trying to do this again? because it didn't work.
Yeah. I found it funny that he did the nasty woman thing again, didn't he?
Yeah, I was surprised, which it's weird because, I mean,
She was a right winger. She was a Tuckerite, wasn't she?
That's what I was gonna say. She was at the Daily Caller, and I mean, she just seemed very calm and rational the whole time, and that piece of it seemed like the biggest contrast to me, where he just seemed like blah, and she was, like trying to be the adult in the room.
How was he again?
Blah! The thing that's been so interesting now is this afternoon, her lawyer's saying that they're looking at whether or not to sue. And I think it makes complete sense for them to sue him again for defamation. But the question that I have, too, is whether she can also sue CNN for platforming this guy. Because to me, it seems like the same case as the Dominion issue, where CNN knew he was going to lie. They knew he was going to say stupid stuff. They did nothing to fact check it in real time.
Yeah, but in their defense,
across the screen.
In their defense, she did try to push back. It wasn't, the Fox thing was a little bit different, where they were cheerleading it. The argument I think that CNN would make is she tried to push back. She just got steamrolled.
See, I don't know if that works. Because still, you get an opportunity to throw up a chyron, right? And just be like, this is a lie. This is a lie. This is a lie.
Big flashing.
Right? I just feel like that is a unique opportunity to just run the fact checks along the bottom of the screen underneath him.
What was that guy's name? Chuck Barris. Do you remember Chuck Barris? The old, maybe you're not old enough, the old Gong Show. Where they had Mean Gene, the dancing machine, and if your act was bad, they would hit this big gong and they had a hook that'd pull you off stage. They should have done that.
There you go. I remember the SNL guy who would do the top headlines for the hard of hearing and would scream. That's sort of how I feel about trying to teach Trump people anything, is you need somebody in the lower corner who's just screaming things at them.
No, but here's the thing. Did that move the needle at all? I mean, I got exactly what, before you turned it on, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew exactly how it was going to turn out. I knew how the red hats and the blue hats were going to react. There's nothing new here. We're just recycling. This is like a bad rerun.
Yeah.
This is like a bad sequel.
Rerun. And I do think that the one difference is that it gave Joe Biden an opportunity to, like you said, come back and be like, really, you guys, we want to do this again? And I think that was his big message in 20, right? Is he was just like, can you handle another 4 years of this?
You want this?
And I mean, I wonder how many people are, that are not in the political the politierati, the politically involved and the activist culture. I wonder how many of those people remember what that was like and how exhausting it was to just be like, are we at war? Is somebody going to kill us? Like it was one day to the next. So hopefully that has reawakened some people, but they weren't watching last night.
No.
Those people are the ones who just caught the news of it this morning, and the news was really bad for Trump.
Oh, it's really bad. And, because a lot of the things that the positions he took aren't popular with the local poll, the recent polling. I take the Putin's not a war criminal. I mean, 80% of the people in the Quinnipiac poll think he's a war criminal. Trump's like, no, he's my buddy. We're pals.
And the other problem is that you have a lot of Republicans in the Senate, like big Republicans. Even Lindsey Graham is caddy, his golf caddy, who was just like, yeah, no, that's not true. And there's only so much that Lindsey Graham can BS, right, about something Donald Trump says, where he's just like, well, what I think he meant was, and you're just like, I don't think you can squirm out of this.
Yeah, not even Foghorn Leghorn can bail him out of this one.
Yeah.
No, but the one thing that caught my attention out of all of it, and that I was really surprised by, if you could say anything, is that he took credit for overturning Roe. That to me actually threw his justices under the bus, because we all knew, and look, we had talked about this during the confirmation processes of all of the Trump appointees, that we all knew that the first chance they got, they were going to overturn it. We all knew that they were BSing. We all knew that Susan Collins was full of it. We all knew. He just confirmed what we all knew.
He did. And I think that is the piece of it where Republicans have kind of tried to walk away a little bit and hide from it, because now we're seeing all of remember all of the times where we were talking about the worst case scenarios and all the bad things that would happen, and everybody's like, you're being hysterical. And it turns out that those are all true.
Yeah.
All of those terrible things are happening. And so now Republicans are like trying to hide under the covers to pretend like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen. I didn't want, women having miscarriages to die. And it's like, well, we told you this would happen. And Trump basically came out on stage and said, hey, it was me. I did all of this. And I think the reason he did that is because he's losing evangelicals like crazy.
Yep.
They've got another option for somebody who is just as much of a lunatic, but hasn't had 7 wives and screwed half of New York in a dressing room against their will. So I think that they are trying to flee from that, and he's got to figure out some way to get them back, because otherwise all he's got is, the militias and the disaffected.
Yeah, the white supremacists. Yeah. And that's going to be enough to get him through the primary, though. And this is what I think Democrats are hoping for, that he gets enough of the crazy wing of the Republican Party to make him the nominee, and that it'll be an easier time for Biden. And even, look, I found it interesting today that even on the right-wing Twitters, they were saying Democrats want Trump because they think that Biden can beat him. The polling showed Biden ahead of Trump, but I think that even the right understands that to be the reality.
Yeah, and I think that is going to end up being, if DeSantis gets into this thing, that's going to be a winning message for them, but for him. But he also is in this very awkward position where he can't alienate the Trump voters either. So he's got to play this funny balance of, he's the guy who's going to lose. I'm the guy who can win, but, he's not the bad guy. And I don't know how you do both of those things at the same time.
No, I found it interesting. And look, that he went to CNN. One of the arguments that I've gotten a bunch of people emailing me, Joe Biden would never go on Fox News and take that kind of thing up. And I'm going, probably not. Because why would you subject yourself to this? Trump thrives in chaos. He wants this because, hey, he's going to get attention. And look, we've spent the last 10 minutes talking about nothing but Trump. This plays to him, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is that I think Joe Biden would go to Fox News if the rules were exactly the same. What happened with Donald Trump is basically he was doing what CNN called a town hall, but the reality is Trump bought in all of his own people to be the town hall audience. So the people who were asking him questions were his own people. They were all MAGA people.
If you got a question for her,
if Joe Biden did that, and brought his own people into Fox News, they'd lose their mind. Everybody would be like, oh, he's a coward. He won't answer real questions. But that's exactly what happened to Trump. And to me, again, like, that is not a town hall. That is, a glorified, expensive, free advertisement for Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. And look, that's why he went. And for me, a town hall is, some kind of, bipartisan. This was a set up, staged audience from the very beginning. But the other thing that got my attention, and you're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris. Sarah's a reporter at Raw Story, rawstory.com, the website, if you want to check out the work that she does. The other thing that was a little surprising, because Trump had always said, the debt ceiling thing was stupid. Why wouldn't you raise it? It's bad for business. And I thought, the one consistent thing that I thought maybe he was going to bring was this business person's perspective. That no, this is bad. We can't default. It's going to be bad for Wall Street. It's going to be bad, and we shouldn't do it. But he didn't. He went full on. I don't give a rat's behind about the country or anything else. The heck with Biden. He called for a default. He wants to shoot the hostages.
But that makes sense because he's not going to lose anything from it. the two parties are not Trump and Biden. The two parties are Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans and Joe Biden. And when Trump had the option to raise the debt ceiling with Republicans, he did it no question. When it was the turn of Democrats, he demanded that they fund his wall before he would agree to raise the debt ceiling. And I think Democrats agreed to give him like $5 and a can of jelly beans or something. But it wasn't even close to what he had asked for. And I think the issue with Biden is that he's so furious, I think, because of the debt crisis that he had during the Obama administration, which until Trump came along was the longest government shutdown.
Right.
And I think Biden is just like, I'm done. Like, we can negotiate on the budget. I am absolutely fine negotiating on the budget, but raise the debt ceiling. Come on, just do it.
No, and it's one of those things I've said he's got to stay the course on this. And if he has to use the 14th Amendment, I think you have to. I think you have to take this before the Supreme Court, because I think if I'm rolling the dice, I'm thinking the corporate Supreme Court is going to be more in line with corporate America and the Chamber of Commerce than Trump apparently is. I thought, if you voted for Trump because you thought he was the business guy, he was the guy who was going to bring business back to politics, he just told you he doesn't know anything about business and he doesn't care about business.
He doesn't care, and I think you're right about the Supreme Court, particularly if you get a couple of corporations that are willing to buy a couple of justices, which apparently are relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, $500,000 vacation.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I got to get your thoughts on the other New York scandal, because it worked. Did you had George Santos. I was disappointed. He didn't show up in drag.
Well, yeah, I can see how that would have been awkward, because then the story would have been his bad makeup. Unless he's learned anything since then. Bless his heart. But yeah, I think that is going to be a very fun indictment to watch. I think the thing that I have been watching in the last couple of days has been the audio tapes that have been slowly dropping from that the documentary that the guy wanted to film, but Santos wanted him to pay him to do the documentary, and just all of that has come out, and the very strange way that he talks and the way that he basically tried to tell the guy that the ethics committee would let him be paid for doing this documentary, which I doubt was the case at all. But he didn't actually come out and say that. He just said, "Oh, the ethics committee have given me some good news, and apparently people do this all the time." And and it's just like, oh, you idiot, you stupid idiot. But that's the kind of stuff that I think got him in trouble and is going to continue to get him in trouble. And he is just so delusional if he thinks he can squirm out of this.
No, you're right. But I do find it interesting, though. You got Comer, coming out and saying that, we got bank records. The Biden family has bank accounts, and we got bank records, and there's $10 million. Now, no links back to Joe, but they've got bank records, and not a peep really about Santos. I just see these extremes as really, really very troublesome. And I'll say it again on the Biden situation. If you can show me a link from all of the Biden people's bank accounts to Joe Biden, where there is a quid pro quo, then yeah, I'm going to side with you. If you're just showing me anecdotal, hey, they got bank accounts, look, bank accounts, it's all nonsense.
The Comer thing was, oh, look, there are a bunch of LLCs.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking at like 6 people that do all kinds of different business, and you're surprised that they have different LLCs. Whereas you look at Donald Trump's LLCs and there's just like hundreds.
Yep.
It's like fly paper that's been on the wall for 7 years, right? And it's the thing that I feel like I'm watching with Comer is that everything that they reveal about the Bidens has an actual link to Donald Trump and to his White House. Like all of the things that they're blaming Biden for, saying that was bad that Biden did, it's like, that exact same thing happened with Jared Kushner, right?
Only 10 times worse.
Yeah.
The difference between 10 million and 2 billion.
Yeah.
There's a little, I know there's zeros involved and that can be complicated, but it's so much bigger considering that Kushner actually worked in the White House. Yeah.
In the White House.
Let the fun begin. But Sarah, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Have an awesome weekend, everybody.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out the website, rawstory.com, and check out the work that she does there. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the first day of the Pullman strike. The strike started in the company town of Pullman, on the south side of Chicago, where workers made luxury sleeping cars for passenger trains. As a depression swept the nation, workers had seen their wages slashed, but rents owned to the company owner George Pullman stayed the same. The strike won support from the American Railway Union and its leader, Eugene V. Debs. The American Railway Union called for a boycott of all Pullman cars, and more than 250,000 railway workers participated in the work action against Pullman. The strike was crushed by legal injunctions and with federal troops. In a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, Eugene V. Debs was imprisoned for his support of the boycott. One prominent supporter of the strike was Chicago area Reverend William H. Cardawine. The Reverend supported the strikers from his pulpit. After the strike, his book, The Pullman Strike, helped spread the word of Pullman. In it, he warned, "We as a nation are dividing ourselves, like ancient Rome, into two classes, the rich and the poor, the oppressor and the oppressed. On the side of the oppressor, there is power and protection, class legislation, and military support. We are following in the tracks of ancient Rome," he wrote, instead of learning lessons from her failures and defeats. No country can prosper, no government long perpetuate itself and its institutions, which does not administer judgment and justice alike to all its people. These words from Reverend Carwadine seem more relevant than ever today. Will we heed his warning? Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Gotta love Texas. Gotta love Texas, because the Texas legislature just evidently passed a bill that would allow schools to employ chaplains. So we're going to have pastors right into school. Going to have counselors, yes, but we need religious folk in the school too. Because again, there are these people who believe the only way we're going to stop gun violence is to put God back in the school. And here's the thing. I come back to this place of, okay, which chaplains, which religions are we going to have proportional representation? Will there be multiple faiths where people can pick and choose and maybe change their ideology and their thoughts? Will it be a real education, or will it be an indoctrination? That's my thought. Now we all know, it's the indoctrination. Interesting story coming out of the National Abortion Federation. They just released a report that said, hey, thanks to Trump overturning Roe, the number of burglaries of abortion clinics has gone up by 231%. The number of stalking cases has gone up by 229%. Arson is up 100%. Assault and battery up 29%. Invasions, where they actually break into the clinic while it's open, up 25%. Death threats up 20%. Yeah, things are good, because we're going to take down those abortion folk. And you look at what they're doing in Alabama. Now remember, they said we're not going to criminalize it. No, we're not going to go after the mothers. No. There's now a law that they're pushing in Alabama that would allow anyone who gets an abortion to be prosecuted for murder. Now, it's interesting. They do have a couple of defenses, like you can have the duress defense because, something bad happened to you. They've expanded the definition of a person to be the moment of fertilization, and I'm not sure how you're going to figure that out, but and does that matter with the census? Do we get that? It would prohibit the prosecutions if a pregnancy is accidentally terminated. I'm not sure what that means. And that's, again, open to interpretation by overzealous prosecutors. Very, very strange. It would repeal the provision in current law that prohibits homicide or assault prosecutions. So if you get into a fight and something happens, now you're going to be tried for murder if the fetus dies. They're going full tilt boogie. Also, they're not sure if the medical abortion pill will trigger the murder charge, or if you go across state lines. This one of the most comprehensive bills that we've seen. Now, what I find interesting is this is Alabama. Sure, why not? And it's Alabama, the state that had Doug Jones as their senator, a thoughtful, intelligent guy, wants to move his state and the country forward, and he lost to probably the dumbest guy in the Senate, Tommy Tuberville, and lost by a lot. The dumbest guy in the Senate was interviewed by this Turskin guy who was basically asking questions about MAGA Republicans and the state of the Republican Party. And Tuberville, interestingly enough, said, this guy was saying, look, in the military, there are a lot of white supremacists. He said, there are folks with white nationalist beliefs, unfortunately, in the country. Do you believe they should serve in the military? And Tuberville says, well, first define what is white nationalist. So the guy says a white nationalist propagates Nazism. A white nationalist could be someone who doesn't believe that black and brown people are equal. And Tuberville says a white nationalist is a Nazi? Like, surprise, he didn't know, doesn't know. The guy said, well, it could be one of their beliefs, a white supremacist. He says, I don't look at it like that. He was then asked, how do you look at it? He said, I look at a white nationalist as a Trump Republican. That's what we're called all the time. A MAGA person, that's what we're called all the time. And I'm going, he said it out loud. He said what we all know. And you go, no, they're not all white nationalists. They're not Trump Republicans. Well, starting today throughout the weekend, there is a big shindig at Doral, one of Donald Trump's clubs down in one of his resorts down in Florida, that, guess what? Going to have a number of conservatives who do espouse white supremacist views, who have praised Hitler, who have done, well, things that you would put in the realm of Nazi sympathizer, of white supremacist. And Tommy, the dumbest guy in the Senate, Tuberville, he got one right. He got one right. Eric Trump's going to be there. Laura Trump's going to be there. And Devin Nunes, who I'm still shocked, is still the president, the CEO of Truth Social. That hasn't tanked yet. So good times. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Something I said got under your skin. I want to hear it. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, more on the debt ceiling with our good friend Morris Pearl from the Patriotic Millionaires. Back after this.
I don't think there's any doubt that there will be pollutants getting into the water.
Shell refinery fire in Houston finally extinguished, but pollution concerns remain. Biden administration proposes money-saving efficiency standards for dishwashers. Plus,
the Minnesota legislators did not back down from the onslaught of lobbying from corporations whose products are laced with these chemicals.
Minnesota to enact nation's strongest restrictions on PFAS forever chemicals.
All of those restrictions and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It just occurred to me that liberals want to get rid of mechanical dishwashers and return to the humankind, hence their embrace for cheap illegal labor.
Greg Gutfeld, Fox News. Do you not have anything good to offer to the world? I think the question answers itself. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, Fox News may have nothing good to offer to the world, but you do every day on the Green News Report.
Well, we'll see about that.
Okay.
First, in Greenland, another study concludes that the Greenland ice sheet is melting faster than thought due to warming ocean waters melting it from below. The researchers discovered that daily tides of increasingly warmer water had eroded a 500-foot deep hole at the base of one of Greenland's major glaciers over just the last few years, accelerating its retreat. They say that dynamic mechanism is not factored into models of sea level rise caused by global warming, meaning the extent of future sea level rise could be vastly underestimated.
Meaning they haven't been counting this as part of their calculation.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
In Texas, a major chemical fire that injured 9 workers at a troubled Shell refinery near Houston this week was finally extinguished after 3 days. The company said tests showed no harmful levels of chemicals in the air.
The company said that, did they?
Yep, but it was forced to release toxic wastewater runoff into the Houston Ship Channel.
Oh.
Rice University environmental law professor Jim Blackburn told local news,
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that there will be pollutants getting into the water. I think the question is environmental impact to the ship channel itself, and particularly to Galveston Bay, which is one of the most important fisheries in the United States.
Well, it may be important, but not as important as oil.
Shell's Deer Park refinery unit has a history of malfunctions and unauthorized pollution releases, recording at least 8 incidents over the last 2 years. But state regulators issued no fines because Texas law relieves industrial operators of liability for pollution events as long as they're reported as accidents or emergencies.
Maybe we need to put Texas regulators in quotes.
A new study out this week puts a price on the U.S. oil and gas industry's costs to human health, calculating that pollution from U.S. oil and gas production causes about $77 billion in impacts to public health nationwide every year. And oil and gas production contributes to more than 7,500 excess deaths and nearly 500,000 asthma attacks in the U.S. annually. The biggest impacts are in Texas, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Louisiana.
Yeah, but those numbers don't take into account all of the profits that the oil companies actually make, right?
True. Some good news. The Department of Energy has proposed new efficiency rules for dishwashers, the first in more than a decade, that will save Americans money on water and energy bills. Manufacturers would be required to reduce energy consumption by nearly 30%, collectively saving more than $160 million on utility bills every year. The Biden administration also launched a $4 billion effort to electrify U.S. ports to reduce significant air pollution in nearby communities. The Environmental Protection Agency has ordered chemical giant Chemours to stop discharging extremely high levels of toxic PFAS chemicals into a major West Virginia river that provides drinking water for 5 million people.
Oh, I'm sure they'll do that right away.
PFAS chemicals are linked to major illnesses like cancers and autoimmune diseases and are called forever chemicals because they don't break down in the environment. Finally, in Minnesota, state lawmakers are on the verge of passing a major bill with some of the toughest PFAS regulations in the nation.
Good.
The law bans PFAS chemicals for all but the most essential uses. It's named for Amara Strandy, who spent her final months campaigning for the restrictions before she died of a rare liver cancer last month at 21. Here's her father, Michael Strandy.
Through her pain and exhaustion, Amara was willing to be a voice of those who have become the victims of illnesses that are linked to these forever chemicals. Amara called on the lawmakers of Minnesota to do what is right in passing laws that will not only protect our environment and human lives, but also force industries to find alternative ways of manufacturing their products without these deadly chemicals.
Thank you, Amara. Thank you, Minnesota. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently the big debt ceiling meeting that was scheduled on Friday postponed. Not quite sure why. I'm sure they're deciding their tactics. Maybe that's it, or maybe the ice cream melted. I don't know. What is interesting though is the newspaper of the investor class, the Wall Street Journal, reported that Moody's Analytics is saying that if we default, more than 7 million jobs could be lost. Unemployment could be above 8%, and basically wiping out all of the progress we've made over the last couple of years. Now, the weird thing is there are some giddy over the idea that we could make Biden look bad. I'm not in that category. This is stupid. This should have been already done by now. But we've got to go through this exercise, and here to share some thoughts on just how bad this could be, I've asked our good friend Morris Pearl to come talk with us. Morris is the chair of the Patriotic Millionaires. Patrioticmillionaires.org is their website if you want to check out their work. Morris, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, great to be in your show, Rick.
So
great to be here.
The newspaper of the investor class is saying, hey, if we default, potentially 7 million jobs lost, over 8% unemployment, pain, suffering, chaos. Why are we even talking about touching this button? Why are we talking about defaulting at all?
There are a bunch of people in the country who basically don't think it's right that the government is doing things to help people. They want to go back to the good old days when they think America was great again in like the 1850s, when the government didn't do much of anything. And I don't think that I would prefer to live in today, not 1850.
Yeah,
So
I wasn't around back then, so I don't know.
America was very different.
Most certainly it was. You know, most of the people that I talk to think the 1950s were the great period of time, without understanding that there was a lot of government investment. We had extremely high tax rates. It was a very different country. It was more of a we country than a hooray for me and the heck with everybody else country.
A we country for, white guys like our parents and grandparents. Not so much for, black people, Latino people, Chinese people. The Chinese Exclusion Act was still in place. Mortgages were only available in racially heterogeneous neighborhoods, meaning all white. We expanded our country a great deal, not by bringing more people, but by including the people we already had. And that's part of the reason we had this great bull market through the 1960s and 70s, even with inflation picking up. We've had a great run. And some people don't like that. They don't like the fact that there's lots of other people doing as well as they are. They think that they deserve to be special somehow because, I don't know, God sent white people to this country to kill all the Native Americans and take over. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird story when you try and drill down to it. But the sad reality is we've been trained over these last 40, 50 years that it's all about me and it's not about we. And look, you're right. The 1950s, we did have divisions, but even in those communities, there was a sense of we. One of the things we learned about when we did our civil rights tour is, we were down in Jackson, Mississippi, where they had a Black Wall Street, where there was tons of Black-owned businesses. There was tons of community. There were things that people were brought together and were fighting together to make better lives, and somehow we screwed that up too.
Yeah, yeah, we certainly did. The first use of aerial bombardment was the white people destroying the black neighborhoods in Tulsa, Oklahoma, um, around 100 years ago. I'm hoping that we don't go back, that these, white supremacists who are talking about replacement theory realize that they're actually better off with a diverse society, with everyone participating, with lots of customers who can buy stuff and participate in the economy.
No, it's interesting. What's interesting to me, Morris, is I watched the town hall thing last night with Trump, and one of the things that my Trump supporter friends have always told me about him, he's a businessman. He's a businessman first. He's a great businessman. That's what they tell me. Whether it's true or not, we can debate that for days. But he came out yesterday and said that he wants to see the country default, which, you're a business person. Does that make any business sense whatsoever? Would any business person in this country go, yeah, that would be good for business?
I cannot think of any possible reason. Maybe if you're a Russian oligarch or a Chinese oligarch or something, you might be better off if the United States really, if the United States economy is really destroyed. I can't think of any other class of people in the world who would actually prefer that.
Do you agree with?
It's just a sad thing.
No, it's insane to me. But do you agree with Moody's Analytics in their assessment that we could lose 7 million jobs and unemployment rate be over 8%? Could it be that bad?
It could. I was on a webinar with Mark Zandi. Our Zoom boxes were next to each other. We're actually in different places, but just the other day, if the borrowing authority is not increased, then the government will run out of money, whether it's 4 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now, whatever, but it will happen. They'll run out of money. I think there's a couple of possibilities. One is the President of the United States, President Biden, could declare that he was ordered by law to spend this money, and he's going to spend the money and have them print dollars or make coins or something. Technically, the debt limit only applies to paper money, not coins. So they can do that. They could do, a few other crazy things to just sort of say that the whole debt limit thing is a moot point. I don't know if he wants to. I don't think he wants to, but he'd prefer having that limit extended, but he could do that. And then if they don't do that, they'll run out of money. It'll be like if you don't have any money in your checking account, you can't buy any more stuff. Tax revenue comes in, but it's only half, 2/3 of what they were ordered by law to spend, by the laws that Congress has passed for this year's budget. So they're going to have to spend less stuff. And it'll start with places with lots of government workers not getting paid. They can still work. The government still has authority to pay them. It just doesn't have any money.
Right.
It won't have any money at that particular moment. So it'll start with, and all of a sudden, guys who own bars in front of military bases won't have any business because no one will have any beer money. Pretty soon it'll hit hospitals. The actual hospital workers won't be making their rent. Their landlords won't have any money. They won't be making their car payments. The car dealers won't be selling any cars. And it'll expand through the whole economy in the course of a month or two. If all of a sudden the government stops paying literally millions of people and millions of contractors and lots of people get laid off, yeah. I mean, it'll be an expanding recession, depression within, I don't know, a couple of months, I guess.
So, but what do you say to the person, Morris, who goes, well, you just said yourself, we don't have the money. The money's not coming in. We're spending more than we have. We shouldn't do that. And this is the way that we're going to stop doing this. What do you say to that argument?
Well, the fact is, the things that we call money, these dollar bills that we have in our pockets that we pay for stuff with, the government creates more of them from time to time. And some of them are these dollar bills we carry around, and some of them are these things called T-bills that they issue that are promises for more dollar bills. And when you're dealing with someone who is allowed to print their own money, the US government and the Fed, a promise to give you money is the same thing as actual money, because all money is just a promise of something. The dollar bills aren't really worth anything in themselves,
Right.
just the paper. They're a promise that you can use them to buy stuff. And so are the bills and the notes and the bonds and all these other things the government creates. So essentially what the government is doing every year, it's taking in a bunch of money with taxes and it's sending out more money. Essentially, it's creating more money. The total number of dollars in existence is going up. It's been going up every year almost for, 100 years or so. And essentially, that's what they're saying they don't like. They don't like the fact that the number of dollars in existence is increasing. But it has to increase. We have more people. We do more stuff. People want raises. So the total amount of money in the money supply has to go up every year. That's why we went off the gold standard years ago. That's why Democrats from William Jennings Bryan on have been arguing that we need a flexible currency and not a gold standard or something like that with a fixed amount of dollars.
Let me ask you about that, because I get a lot of my conservative friends who want to go back to the gold standard. They have, someone told them something that this might be better. What would happen if we were on the gold standard? Would it harm our growth? Would we not be able to expand our economy? Would it mean less?
Well,
what would it mean?
It would mean not having any growth unless people found more gold mines. And I would prefer having government officials who report to our elected, the people we elect by voting, deciding on monetary policy, not gold miners. Essentially, it would mean we put gold miners in charge of making monetary policy, and yeah, there'd be no growth. There was a time when we were on the gold standard when farmers who were having very profitable farming operations could not borrow money because their banks didn't have any gold, even though they were growing crops and stuff that they could sell. But if you don't have any gold, you can't buy anything. And the amount of gold was fixed. As we were having more, as the country was expanding, there wasn't enough gold to buy stuff, even though we had more stuff. So it essentially made deflation in gold. And that's not what we want. We don't want to run out of money, even when we have stuff to sell, and even when people have jobs where they can earn money, but there's no one has any. That's not good. That's what causes recessions and depressions. And that's why we went off the gold standard, and so is every other civilized country in the world, many years ago. I don't want to put gold miners in charge of our official monetary policy. I don't think that would work well at all.
No, I'm with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show, where Morris Pearl. Morris is the chair of the Patriotic Millionaires, patrioticmillionaires.org. This is the website if you want to check out the work that they do. Now, I've had people tell me that they believe the U.S. economy is like a business, but it's a Ponzi scheme now, and no serious investor would invest in the U.S. I've had people tell me this because our debt to GDP ratio is so high. You're actually an investor. You're someone who does this. Does that argument hold any water with you?
Well, I spend U.S. dollars. I live in my apartment here. I have to pay our maintenance fees. They used to pay the doorman and stuff in U.S. dollars. So I need U.S. dollars. That's what I use when I buy stuff. And it's not a Ponzi scheme because the government is allowed to create U.S. dollars. So they're not going to run out. And it's kind of like the argument, it'd be kind of like arguing that, American Airlines can't issue any more frequent flyer points because they're going to run out. They're not going to run out of frequent flyer points. They might run out of seats on the planes, so they'll have to stop eventually, but they're not going to run out of points, the actual numbers they put in your accounts.
Well, they need to get more planes. So that's the other part of this for me.
And the government has to get more taxpayers, but they do. Our economy, our population is expanding. Every year we have more people with jobs. Every year we have more people making stuff and doing stuff. And factories are making more cars. Farmers are growing more stuff. People are working more hours because there's more people. So the government is by in that analogy, getting more airplanes and more seats and stuff. And they have to expand the number of dollars the same way the airline, if they get more airplanes and more customers and more everything, they need more points. It's the same idea.
So last line of questioning I've got for you, because we're trained to believe that the government operates just like we operate in our homes at the kitchen table. If we don't have enough money coming in, we can't spend it. You're arguing that that's not reality. That's not how the economy works. Because some people say, look, we should balance our budgets. We shouldn't spend as much. I argue we should raise taxes and bring more revenue in. Is there a way forward in this, given how we've been kind of trained like Pavlovian dogs to see debt and foam?
I think you've been trained a little bit wrong, but it's hard to say that because it's true for almost everybody else. It's true for your state governments. They can't spend more money than they take in. It's true for your brother-in-law. He can't spend more money than he makes a living. But it's not true for people who print their own money. And fortunately, the United States has never defaulted, and people all over the world have trust in U.S. dollars. There's more U.S. currency outside the United States than inside the United States, and most of it's $100 bills, because that's how people want to store their cash all over the world, because they have faith in the U.S. and the U.S. currency. So we do not want that to be destroyed. We do not want to lose that special privilege we have as Americans. And I'm hoping that the government find some way forward to solve this crisis and we don't lose that special privilege.
No, and this is exactly why I think that there should be no debt ceiling whatsoever. This should be done away with. If we want to talk about spending, we talk about it before we spend it. This idea of an artificial cap that we're going to hold each other hostage over every couple of months or every couple of years is insane. And not just us, but hold the world hostage over is just insane to me. But Morris,
I told you before, it's like if your wife gave you a budget to go shopping and then a month later said she's going to refuse to pay the credit card bill because she wants to pressure you into doing something else next year. It's that ridiculous.
It is that ridiculous. Morris, I appreciate the time. Love having you on. Hope folks will check out the website, patrioticmillionaires.org. Morris Pearl, chair of the Patriotic Millionaires. Thanks so much, buddy.
Great, Rick. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Again, I come back to this. It's silly that we have this artificial cap that used to be a yawn vote. They used to come in and vote because they already spent the money. It's simple. Back after this. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've been watching the Republican presidential field. This Vivek Ramaswamy guy, he's a character. You got to give him credit. Entrepreneur, wealthy guy. He's got a solution for everything, and his solution for Republicans to win an election is get young people to not be able to vote. Evidently, Vivek wants to change the 26th Amendment so that 18 to 25-year-olds don't get to vote. Well, they'll get to vote, if they join the military or do some kind of, community service for 6 months, then they can do it. Or my favorite one, and this you got to pass the immigration test. You got to pass the same civics test that immigrants have to pass to become a naturalized citizen. And at age 25, miraculously at 25, then you'd be able to you'd be able to have the right to vote. Because somehow, I guess, between 18 and 24 and 363 days, you can not know anything, and on that magic day that you become 25, you are now a well-rounded citizen, which is nuts. It's not going to happen because you need 2/3 of Congress to amend the Constitution. Not going to happen, but it is interesting that you've got people who are trying to do what they can to stop people from voting. And this is one of them. Again, my mind went back to this place of the old literacy tests of the good old days, or not good old days. That the reason we were able to stop certain communities, black people, from voting was by having these idiotic literacy tests that no one could pass. How many jelly beans are in this jar kind of stuff. And this kind of stuff is, it just gets to the heart of a lot of that kind of craziness. It's but it is what it is. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are we doing today?
Oh, totally insane as usual.
What I expect.
But apparently, since the Republicans are crazy, why not?
I'm with you. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say that I think all of the Republican candidates have totally lost their mind. And it's like a big contest to see who's the craziest.
Well, who can out-Trump Trump seems to be the game. And let's hit on the secret. No one is going to out-Trump Trump.
That's true. He's had decades of being insane. But yeah, I've been shaking my head, especially over. You notice they're always wanting to change the Constitution so they can favor themselves, their beliefs or whatnot. It's just, you just shake your head and go, patriotic, huh? Yeah, okay. But have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, what they are is they're original intenters. They believe in the original intent, which meant that, blacks were in the fields, gays in the closet, women in the kitchen making pie, of which my wife made me a wonderful lemon meringue pie, which was fabulous, by the way, for my birthday, and thank you for that. But, they want to go back to that original intent where only white landowning males over 21 can vote and nobody else. And, they're against all of the changes that have happened over these 200 and some odd years of progress. Again, these are people who, they're not going to tell you this out loud anymore. Antonin Scalia was one of the biggest champions of the whole original intent idea, but the Federalist Society's, truly in that camp. But this voting thing, this is real. Republicans are doing everything they can do to stop young people from voting because they know that their policies, young people are not on board with. And they've motivated young people over Roe, they're being saddled with a lifetime of student loan debt that past generations didn't have. They're concerned about there maybe not being a future for them. So these younger voters are motivated to be politically active. So you've got folks like Ramaswamy who are going, nope, we don't want them voting. This is basically calling them stupid. Just to cut to the chase. This kind of a statement is calling all young people under 25 stupid. And I would argue, I would love to take the immigration test to a Trump rally. Maybe we should do that at some point. I'd love to see how many of them don't know how many members of Congress there are. I'd love that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the first day of the Pullman strike. The strike started in the company town of Pullman, on the south side of Chicago, where workers made luxury sleeping cars for passenger trains. As a depression swept the nation, workers had seen their wages slashed, but rents owed to the company owner George Pullman stayed the same. The strike won support from the American Railway Union and its leader, Eugene V. Debs. The American Railway Union called for a boycott of all Pullman cars, and more than 250,000 railway workers participated in the work action against Pullman. The strike was crushed by legal injunctions and with federal troops. In a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, Eugene V. Debs was imprisoned for his support of the boycott. One prominent supporter of the strike was Chicago area Reverend William H. Cardawine. The Reverend supported the strikers from his pulpit. After the strike, his book, The Pullman Strike, helped spread the word of Pullman. In it, he warned, "We as a nation are dividing ourselves, like ancient Rome, into two classes, the rich and the poor, the oppressor and the oppressed. On the side of the oppressor, there is power and protection, class legislation, and military support. We are following in the tracks of ancient Rome," he wrote, instead of learning lessons from her failures and defeats. No country can prosper, no government long perpetuate itself and its institutions, which does not administer judgment and justice alike to all its people. These words from Reverend Carwadine seem more relevant than ever today. Will we heed his warning? Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Tiptoeing around the democratic process, Indiana's Republican legislature has become the latest of that ilk to slap its local school librarians with an idiotic book ban. Snuck into law behind closed doors, the partisan Hoosier law requires librarians to pull books that the learned lawmakers consider, quote, harmful to minors. Just to juice up the ignorance and arrogance of their ban, the law criminalizes failure to comply by punishing librarians with up to 2.5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. What constitutes harmful to minors? Indiana's priggish politicians declared nudity, sexual references, and offensive content to community standards to be violations. Obviously, then, books commanding that rape victims marry their rapists, as well as celebrating daughters who seduce their father to bear his children, plus endorsement of bestiality, copulation in church, women boiling their children for food, and so god-awful much more, have to be ripped from the shelves and burned. Only all of this is enshrined in the Bible, which is urged on Indiana's youngsters in Sunday schools, conveniently placed in the bedstands of every chain hotel and cited by pious lawmakers as their moral compass. The so-called Good Book is replete with the gross and explicit sexual material that Republican book censors call harmful. Indeed, a feisty civil libertarian organization named Freedom from Religion Foundation gives away book labels you can stick in Bibles, warning that, quote, literal belief in this book may endanger your health and life. This is Jim Hightower saying the books that right-wing autocrats want to ban are not pornographic. They just explore ideas that those politicians don't like, ideas that young people are already grappling with. And by the way, why not require these pious lawmakers to disclose what licentious material they've been reading before they dictate what we read?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love the fact that this is great. Evidently, House Republicans passed a bill to clamp down on unemployment insurance fraud. And you can't make this up. One of the bill's sponsors is New York Republican Representative George Santos, who has been indicted for unemployment insurance fraud. So he literally voted for the bill to crack down on what he's accused accused of doing. Now, what's interesting is there are some legal experts that said this guy could spend 20 years in jail. And here to share some thoughts on and has some experience with not unemployment insurance fraud, but other legal troubles in Congress. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
So this seems kind of brazen. I mean, he voted for the bill that it's symbolic. It's not going anywhere. But he literally voted for the bill that would go after him.
Look, he doesn't care. They don't want him there. Mitt Romney is the guy that's been, from day one saying, he shouldn't be there. Of course, you can't, I tell people this, you can't throw them out because, they're idiots or they're doing this or they're doing that until, there's a legal process there. But Romney from day one, the famous thing, Romney, got to give him credit. He walked down the aisle and he's like, I'm not getting in a picture with you. I know what you're doing. This is what's really weird, too. Look, when I got in trouble, I must say, I was treated very decently, including by Nancy Pelosi, and Steny Hoyer, the two leaders at the time. And for the most part, and it's not that you expect you'd be treated decently, but I had, developed some friendships, right, over the years. So Santos comes in on fire, brazen, and I talked with friends up on the Hill. They said he was one of those guys from day one, is like walking down the hall, almost shoving people, aside, didn't care, was lying to everybody every day. And now, he's facing some serious stuff. I have a form that was in congressional form that was not correct. This guy's facing some real serious stuff. Interstate wire fraud, on and on and on. And but here's the thing. He doesn't have to resign. And you can notice how members are starting to come out saying you ought to go. But what do you hear from McCarthy? McCarthy doesn't have votes to spare.
Yeah, no. That's it's amazing to me. But I was reading one thing that said he could spend 20 years in jail.
Well, yeah, I did a plea deal of 18 months with the government because I was never indicted. I wasn't arrested. This was all a plea process with the government and I back and forth because, the last thing they wanted was a trial. And in certain cases, they don't like trials. So I did a plea deal of 18 months. The judge gave me 30. She thought, 30 months looked better. So he could even do a plea deal. And depending on the judge, he could get more. So he could do a plea deal for 5 or 6 years and maybe get 10. But the charges he's facing, I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to face those charges in federal court. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, seven counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of making materially false statements to the House of Representatives. Which is the worst of those? For wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, or lying to Congress?
Well, everybody, including Congress, lies.
So
okay.
we can say that's not a big deal.
Let's throw that one out, But I always said, you lie trying to stay out of jail. You tell the truth when you come out, from jail. So, but I think the money laundering and especially the wire fraud, and then anything that's near obstruction of justice. At a personal level here, I didn't have any of that. If I'd have had that, I would have been, losing my mind. This guy's got some real serious things that the government, and by the way, this is something else to note. When the government's doing the back and forth plea deal with you and your attorney's right, and they might be able to convict you, they might not. I don't know. It's a back and forth thing. They feel they've got enough to get you, right? When they arrest you like they did him, you're pretty well guaranteed they've got a pretty decent case.
No,
so,
and the fact that the fact that he's out on $500,000 bond. I'm going a sitting member of Congress has to put up $500,000. Wow.
Right. They must consider him a. Now he had, and I can't. Who can follow this guy? He had some connections to what was it, Brazil or. something like that. So maybe they figure, oh, one other thing, if you want to hear a good one, this is kind of funny. After I pled guilty, I went down the hall in D.C., and they said, okay, give me your passport, and I handed them the standard blue passport, right? And this was funny. Actually, my lawyers didn't think it was funny, but I did. I laughed. And I looked at the guy from the Justice Department. I said, you want my other one? And he went, what other one? I said, this one. And I pulled out the brown passport. Members of Congress can get 3 passports. They can get a blue one. The citizens have that. They can get a brown one, an official, and they can get a black one, a diplomat. And the Justice Department didn't even know that, Rick.
Wow.
I said, you want the second passport? I could literally have boarded a plane that day with that passport.
Yeah, but would you
and
have...
left the U.S. Oh, no, my goodness.
I mean, that's
no
the thing.
way.
I mean, would you have? Probably not.
No, I've got kids and grandkids. With Santos?
I think
probably.
So. Oh, yeah.
So I wondered. Now, I hope they're listening to your show because he surrendered his blue passport. I wonder if somebody said, do you have a brown passport, the black one? Let's see.
Yeah, I got to think no.
If tomorrow morning, all of a sudden, he's on a plane to Brazil, then we can blame them for not listening to the Rick Smith show.
There you go. But I got to think no, because I don't think he's been there long enough to get the black one at least, because that's a diplomat's one, right? You got to go through some hoops, right? Or no?
Oh, they expedite for members.
Okay. All right. Well.
Yep.
I'm sure. I'm sure he's got all
having
three.
Having the black one is not good because there are certain countries diplomats don't have a relationship. If you have the brown one, you could even go to Cuba with the brown one.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yep. There's some little tidbits for you from the Congress.
But here's the thing: I'd be happy to see him go. Let him go. Let him go. Let him go live in a hut somewhere.
But as far as passports, I had mine pickpocketed one time, and I actually went to the embassy, and they actually let me. I shouldn't be telling all this probably, but they let me push the button that actually made my new passport, and that was done in a day. So
yeah,
he might have a brown one.
Was that before 9/11 or after?
That was before, but they do expedite everything for members, though.
Yeah, but
so he literally could have a brown one.
Well, maybe we should be looking into that.
Yeah,
you're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. Did you happen to see the big CNN, the circus there on CNN? Did you happen to catch that in India?
Right. I watched it, and I also looked at CNN's clips yesterday in my news notes I sent out, and I looked at Fox's. Now, it was interesting. Fox does a story about how Trump attacked the moderator, right? That was Fox's story. Then, of course, CNN did a story about the whole thing and Trump denying the election, et cetera. I thought that the moderator handled herself quite well. I don't think that you can say that she, softballed the thing. But let's face something. Look, in the end of the day with this, CNN made some money off of it, right?
That's it.
And they made some money off of it. Trump's never been on CNN. And what's that tell you about Trump? Since he was elected president, he's never been on CNN. So what's that tell you about him? He knows yes, and he knows he needs to reach out anywhere, and that's what he did. He reached out anywhere. But CNN made some money off of it, and I know AOC was, angry at CNN, and some others were. But it's a corporate decision. Nobody should be real shocked. It's a corporate decision.
I'm like, I've got friends who are like, I can't believe they did that. I go, I can. It's about the money.
I can.
Listen to Rupert Murdoch. Rupert will set you straight. It's not about red or blue. It's about green. That's all it's about.
That's true. That's what it was. I mean, it didn't hurt Trump to do it.
I think it did. I think it's going to hurt him a little bit. I think he took some positions that are going to come back to bite him. I mean, the whole let the country default. The whole Putin is not a war criminal.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of those things are going to be attack ads come very soon.
Yeah. But see, he would have done that anyway.
True.
He does these things, so he might as well get all this exposure. And what amazes me still, I don't know. I watched it. I'm still amazed at the poll numbers, I think they're going to at some point decrease. And of course, you know what I hold to, that he won't go to the convention as a nominee, but that's just me. I think eventually these numbers get soft enough, but I don't know. I'm just baffled how he's still walking.
It's amazing to me. But the one thing that I grabbed onto is he said that he's responsible for Roe versus Wade being overturned. I argue he threw the justices under the bus because I believed at the time, and I still believe, that he was given assurances that they would overturn it, that everybody knew that those three appointees were going to overturn it, and they went to Congress and they lied during their confirmation, knowing that they were going to overturn it.
Right. I mean, there were a lot of Republicans that didn't want it overturned. Eventually, even if they say they wanted it overturned, they didn't. And then now, the problem, if I was back in Congress, the problem I would have is now the litmus test is, are you for rape, incest, life of the mother? And all of a sudden, if you're for what we call the Hyde Amendment, Henry Hyde of Illinois, all of a sudden, if you're for that, which used to be, if you were right to life, you could be for that amendment. Oh, some people would grumble. Now, because of Roe v. Wade overturned, now if you are for that, wow, you're an abortionist. You want abortions rampant. I mean, boy, did the litmus test change.
No, everything's gotten crazy and much more extreme. I look at Alabama, now saying they're going to start charging women with murder if they have an abortion. You knew it was going to come here, and it's coming a lot faster than I thought it was going to happen.
Right, that's true.
Interesting times we live in. I got to get your thoughts on the immigration thing. We've talked about immigration, for years now. I guess midnight. This what, Title 42, I guess it is, goes away. What's that going to mean?
Well, the GOP's got a border bill. They're going to get some Democrat votes on it, I assume. But both sides of the aisle are worried about this expiration of 42. And that allowed, of course, 42 allowed for the swift expulsion of migrants during the COVID pandemic. And we all know that it's been declared, not now. So maybe no Democrats will actually vote for the bill, but they might be kind of sitting there quietly going, okay, all right, because the Republicans are trying to do I don't know if they got past the first hurdle, but I think they did. And so they want to address, about, different things in the bill, foreign terror language, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as the Title 42, I think that, the bill still has a whole process through the Senate. So the actual resolvement and what happens is going to happen at the border. It's going to happen through the executive, through the White House.
Right. Now, the House did pass a border security bill. The president has vowed to veto it. As I said from the beginning, nothing's going to come of this because, one, it's too big of an issue to beat the other side up with. The extremes will never allow something to happen. And if something does happen, everybody's going to be angry about it. Which is why nothing is going to happen, and we're going to end up in this situation of chaos at the border.
Yeah, and I misspoke. Now it's not going to probably have a Senate vote though.
No, it's not.
It won't make it.
No.
I mean, there's no way.
But even if it does make it through the Senate, and it won't,
then the president vetoes.
The president says he's going to veto it because, again, we can't seem to figure this out, and this is why I keep coming back to how dysfunctional we are. Because there was a moment where we almost had an immigration policy, wasn't there?
Yes. Oh, yes. And and I can also tell you, I was in the room at the time when Bush put forth the good beginnings of a piece of legislation. And I can remember a member standing up, I can't remember who it was, in the back of the room, and he yelled, "Liberals, asylum," and he yelled it. The next thing you know, there's all this grumbling, and then the next thing you know, I don't know, Bush was to the left of the left of the left with people in the room. But he was trying, Andy Card was pushing his chief of staff, and he was trying to get something. And I think had the Republicans given him at least a listen, he might have gotten something through the system. And like I said, now that, the Senate will do nothing on this, if they did, like you said, the president will veto it, it's going to be still up to the executive with Title 42 as it goes away of what happens. I mean, we dealt with immigration before Title 42. We'll deal with it after Title 42. But again, it'll be the executive, just like it was Clinton, just like it was Bush, Obama, Trump, and now Biden. And the Congress, you're right, Rick, they could come. All they have to do, I mean, I make it sound so easy, but the principals have to sit at the table and agree two aspects are looked at. One, I won't say asylum, but dreamers and benefiting people who have been here, even if they're illegal, blah blah blah, and then border security.
Yep,
that's what the Republicans look at. There's your discussion for the Republicans. If that happens, starting on that principle, Rick, they could get a bill.
Yeah, I'm not against border security. All in favor of it.
Sure.
I just know I know walls don't work, so we can build all the wall you want. It's not going to work. I don't know if you've seen the videos on social media of the people climbing the wall.
Yesterday, I watched that video. I got to give them credit. Their traffic's going by.
Yep.
The guy, man, he just both feet up those rails. He's holding on to a rope ladder.
Yeah.
And he throws it up there. I'm like, wow. I mean, this guy, he was good.
No, there's a bunch of those videos. I mean, that's just one.
Yeah.
That's just the most recent. But you built it without a stop gap somewhere out between. Any decent pole climber is going to get over that.
Right. Exactly.
But and I'm not against that. But again, I know they don't work. What we need to be doing also is talking about how do we make places that are unhospitable for people to live more hospitable, because the reason people are walking 1,000 miles in the sand with no shoes on is because where they're coming from is a horrible, desperate place where they can't feed their kids.
Right. Yeah, multiple prong approach, and we do go through. We go through the World Bank. If people say, "Well, we don't need to be spending money," we already do. It's just probably a matter of trying to direct it in a better way for them.
But I go back to 2010 with the whole Tea Party movement. The big thing then was, we spent too much money on foreign aid, and they started gutting and cutting that stuff. And then, surprise, what happens? Desperation comes in. More people start coming here, because I'll tell you, I'll be quite frank. If I'm in one of those situations and I see, I've got to take a walk to the U.S., I'm going to be walking to the U.S.
Right. And a lot of people in countries where you can only fly into the U.S. are actually flying to Mexico and trying to walk across.
Yeah. No, we got a lot to deal with. But, Bob, as always, I appreciate the time. Thanks for your expertise.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend, Bob Ney. I mean, seriously, ask yourself that. If you were on the southern end of the border and you're looking into your children's eyes and knowing that they're hungry, are you not going to scale that wall? Are you not going to climb over the ladder or dig a hole underneath or hop onto the back of a truck or do any of the number of desperate things that go on? Look, we can't solve all the world's problems, but maybe not make them worse. That's where my mind is. How about we not make things worse? Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. It was the first day of the Pullman strike. The strike started in the company town of Pullman on the south side of Chicago. George Pullman made his fortune making luxury sleeping cars for passenger trains. His cars revolutionized the rail industry, making long-distance travel a much more pleasant experience. Pullman founded a model town for his employees. In 1893, an economic crash devastated the U.S. economy. Pullman egregiously lowered the pay of his workers by as much as a third. But he did not lower rents in the company town and did not decrease the dividends he paid to his stockholders. Outraged, the Pullman employees called for a strike. The strike was led by the American Railway Union and its leader, Eugene V. Debs. When the union held its convention in Chicago that June, the delegates voted to boycott any train that included a Pullman car. More than 250,000 railroad workers in 27 states and U.S. territories supported the boycott. Angry businessmen demanded that something be done. President Grover Cleveland promised intervention if any train carrying U.S. mail was halted by the boycott. Railroad owners quickly attached mail cars to as many trains as they could. President Cleveland declared, "If it takes every dollar in the U.S. Treasury and every soldier in the United States Army to deliver a postcard in Chicago, that postcard shall be delivered." Federal troops brutally crushed the strike. 30 people died and more were injured. A federal injunction was filed against Eugene Debs, and he went to jail for 6 months for refusing to stop his support of the boycott. The Pullman strike marked a new level of federal intervention against the cause of labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Judge in Virginia yesterday declared unconstitutional a set of federal laws and regulations that would prohibit 18 to 20-year-olds from licensing a firearm, a handgun. So they have now ruled it's unconstitutional. You cannot stop 18-year-olds from buying a handgun. Even though what they're saying is they could just have their parents buy them for them. That's part of the argument. They're saying, nope, 18 to 20, you can have this. And I assume the AR is going to be the same thing when that comes. I do find it interesting that, I go back to Vivek Ramaswamy. Can't vote until you're 25, but you can buy a gun. You can buy a gun. And this is Florida. Understand it's Florida. Guy went to bed. He woke up, had a severe headache, head pounding. So he asked his wife to drive him to the hospital. Doctors found a bullet lodged behind his right ear. Evidently, according to the report, the nurse looked at the guy and says, "It appears as though you've been shot." And he's like, no way. Who would do that? His wife. Evidently, his wife, she's been jailed on weapons violations while deputies are looking for other charges. Going, can't you just leave? This is the weird kind of place that we're in. And if you want to get even weirder, our Supreme Court ruled in favor of a transgender Guatemalan woman who is facing deportation because the reality is she's seeking asylum because guess what? She's a transgender woman. And the Supreme Court ruled she can stay because, you send this person back. She's going to face persecution back in Guatemala. So I do find it interesting that the court, and this unanimously, and that's the shocker, that people like Clarence Thomas and Judge Alito would vote that way, and they did. Good, I guess in this case, good on them because asylum is supposed to be for those purposes. Now the question then becomes: is this going to be the new angle? Don't know. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you got any questions, comments, something on your mind, something I said got under your skin, by all means, angry, evil emails to the top of the list. If you missed any of the show, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. You'll find ours. We're going to be taking Friday night off. A little break for the birthday. Back on Monday. Hope you enjoy our best of. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where we're